Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa Life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, that power within you to do your bigger work in the world. I am so thrilled to introduce my special guest and friend today, Kristi Staab. She is driven by her passion to guide people around the globe to transform into passionate, purposeful, and positively influential leaders. She is the chief rock star who shares her innovative and inspiring lead like a rock star approach to discover, hone, and put action into the rock star leader within yourself. I love when she refers to putting the rock in your role, and that role is R-O-L-E, the role that you have in the world. So ingenious. I love you so much. Welcome to the show, Kristi.
Hi, Diane. I love you. I'm absolutely honored to be here with you today and to think back on how long I've known you and everything amazing that you have created and continue to create in the world. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And for our listeners that may not know, Kristi and I have been dear friends since 2008. We were in a really groundbreaking program called The Ultimate Game of Life. And it was about building your life based on your values, about what made you happy, healthy, and wealthy. We love Jim Bunch, one of our mentors in that program. And it's just part of this fun conversation we're going to have today is, what are some of the foundations that we are leading with and what we're doing. And I'd love to kind of start with your background, because you come from a corporate background and right. Climbed that corporate ladder and really had all kinds of accolades in that. You have your executive MBA, you have lots of awards, and people don't necessarily know about the fancy background that you came in the industry of entertainment. And I'd love for you to share, your experience in moving in that and what that was like for you from going from a corporate person into the entrepreneurial world.
Woo! Two different mindsets. That much I know for sure. And it's hard to believe. I just celebrated 10 years in business.
Wow.
And I've already almost been in business for 30 years. And I think I still feel like I'm in my 30s. So how is that?
You look it, sister.
Diane, I had an amazing career. I had the opportunity to work in sports, entertainment, and music over the 20 years I was in corporate. Had the opportunity to do things in my career that as a child, I didn't even know were dreams or possibilities. Took me so far away from where I thought I would be as a child, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And at the same time, just about 17 years in, I took a pause. And there were a couple of pauses that I had up to that point where intuitively my body was telling me different things. Like, you're not on the right path. Not as clearly as that. I just made certain choices where it was like a heck no, because it just didn't feel right. Mm-hmm. And so about 3 years before I started my own business, I really took a look at my life. And I said, where do I want to be by the time I'm 40? And I'm heading into 50 now, believe it or not. Where do I want to be? And what difference do I want to be making? Because as amazing as my corporate career was, I didn't feel like I was actually making a difference in humankind, which was really important to me. So I decided that I would take everything that I learned that was of good value, and then hopefully go out and create better leaders in the world. Because in that corporate career for 20 years, I had some fantastic leaders, and I had some leaders that taught me more about who I didn't want to be and what I didn't want to do. And that's where the passionate, purposeful, and positively influential leadership comes from.
Yes, I love this so much. And, you had mentioned to me about some things that were, can be disempowering. And one of those things in being in corporate was, you were faced with some integrity issues about where you would take a stand on some things. And I know that in some circles, there is an expectation to bend some of those personal integrity things. And can you speak a little bit about being faced with that and how you stand in that and how you really utilize that as a launch pad to really get clear on how you wanted to inspire people to be leaders from that place of integrity.
Absolutely. I'm not sure where it came from. I can't pinpoint it. I've always been very clear on my values. And my values have always driven me from a conscious perspective. Well, not always. I mean, there are things that we do unconsciously, but as clear as I could be, I've always followed my values. You can tell when you're in integrity and you can tell when you're out of integrity. And I don't even mean so much as your word. If you're setting out to reach a goal and you're doing things, you're living in a way or behaving in a way, acting in a way that don't support that goal, that's living out of integrity. So I was faced with a decision in 2008 that if it would have happened in the last 3 years, because the shift in society, the shift in culture, it wouldn't be okay now. And so what I talk about is living a life of values that you choose over the course of your lifetime, not the values that society or culture may tell us are okay at any given point in time. So I was asked to do something, and I worked for a family company, and it was the company's name on the outside of the building. And when I was asked 3 times to make a shift in my belief and in my response to a given situation that happened in the workplace, I said, you know what? If it were my name on the building, this would not be okay. And so I'm going to represent the family in a manner that I would want people to represent my name and my family, my business. And so, Diane, in standing up in my values, I will tell you, there were extreme costs and consequences for me doing what I believed was the right thing in the wrong situation. Mm-hmm. And I took a lot of blame. I became a scapegoat. And what I did is I took responsibility for the decision I was making, knowing that when I get to the end of my path, I get to look myself in the eyes and know that I did the best I could in the moment with the decisions I made based on those values. And this is one of those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I commend you for that, because I do know how challenging that can be when you're, representing someone. This is part of when you work for other people, right? That it may be, it's why it's important to know what are the corporate values of, not only your own company, but companies that you work for, and are they in alignment? You and I have had a lot of conversations around values and how we choose them and what those things look like. I'd love for you to share, what is one of your values and how have you, stepped into that and lived that? How's it reflected in your life? Because I love how you are really talking about integrity and values in a much more, they're not just pretty words on the wall, they're really, I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use with this, because when it comes to like values and integrity, they really are pointing you in the direction of how the life that you want to live. They are actually indicators. That's the word I was looking for. They're indicators of how you want to live your life. And so I'd love for you to share, one of those values and how that is reflected in your life.
Absolutely. And values are the foundation for how we choose to live and lead, whether that's unconsciously or consciously. And it's really important for everybody tuning in, if you don't already know this, every decision you make and every behavior or action that you take in your life, no matter how small or how large, is based on your values. I call them the key drivers or key indicators, like you said, Diane. And mine really is about integrity. And even when I'm coaching my clients, what I realize is we'll go through and we'll do an assessment. And they'll say, you know what, gosh, I'm really stressed. I'm feeling like I'm resisting something. And inevitably, when stress comes about, when people are resisting things, when they're procrastinating, oftentimes it's a bump in their values.
Yes.
Something isn't right. Yet if we don't consciously, from a self-awareness perspective, really tune into our values, we won't know. And integrity is about understanding what you stand for and being willing to stand alone and be counted. A great quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. Even if you know there are costs and consequences that you may reap, so to speak, as a result, it's really understanding who you are, what you stand for, and no matter what, sticking by that, even if it feels like you're alone in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I so relate to that. You know, one of my top values is connection, right? And collaboration. And for me, one of the things that I've actually done is I've taken a lot of things off my plate that didn't feel very connective. Right. And because it was one of those things like why, and you were talking about, you know, how are you bumping up against things? Right. And noticing when that was happening, that I found at times it was better to just clear the slate. And then I'm actually in kind of a place where I am just kind of allowing, okay, who am I to be working with? You know, how am I, you know, reflecting my values? How am I making a bigger impact? You know, asking some of these bigger questions that haven't necessarily, actually revealed the answers on some of them yet, right? And to be okay to be in the uncomfortable space of discovering that and connecting and just knowing that the people I'm to be with, whether it's personally or professionally, that will actually happen. And that isn't always in like, you know, a nanosecond that we'd like to hope everything would happen in. But when you do come a place from like, you know, not tolerating living outside of your values, it makes such a huge difference. And I believe that that is actually how people were meant to be connected with happens, is because they see who we are and what we stand for, and they want to be connected to that. Because there are some of those people where you're just like, I don't know what it is that rubs you maybe wrong in a certain way. It's something, and like you said, there's a lot of things that are unconscious that people may not even see. They could just be not your flavor, right? They're just maybe you're not the person to be working with them, and that could just be all it is. But I think it's so important to listen to that inner guidance and what's happening. And you know, we talk here about how are we living our life by design versus default. How are we designing that? In fact, you were part of a TEDx event called Life by Design in India, of all places. First of all, how did that even happen? And share a little bit about your TEDx experience.
You know, there are so many things I want to say right now, specifically to that. It's one of the things, the goals I got really clear on back in 2007 was I wanted to expand my network, and I wanted to have more of a global collaboration, a global experience myself. And I realized that I grew up in a very white Caucasian neighborhood, and that was my life. And so I selected an MBA program that helped get me a little bit of attention around the world just by collaborating with people, one of the words that you had said. And what ended up coming down to, a friend of a friend said, hey, by the way, I'm going to go do a TEDx event in Chennai. And I thought, whoa, I would love to go to India. It's on my bucket list. And I would love to do a TEDx. It's on my bucket list. And so I literally reached out to a friend who was on the committee and said, if you do this next year, I would love to find out how I could be a part of it. They made space for me that year. And I'm talking, we were 6 weeks out.
Wow.
So I think the power of asking, the power of understanding the network that you have and the network that you can create, and just going for it, right? I could have said, oh gosh darn it, I missed out on it. Bummer, poor me. And I was like, well, what would it take? What would it take for me to be a part of it next year? And she said, why wait till next year? Why not do it this year? And it was an amazing experience. I went to India. I added on a trip to Dubai. I got to speak in front of 1,500 people in India who amazingly are looking to us in the West. What's happening in the West? Inspire us. What can we be doing? And I look at India and go, how can I be more like you, more spiritual, more in tune, more conscious? So it's fun sharing across the borders.
Yeah, what a beautiful collaborative experience too, because we don't know, when we grow up in our own block, I forget what the statistics are about. Most people actually don't venture beyond like 6 blocks of where they live in the world. Like it's just such a small, environment that most people have created for themselves. And it may be 6 miles. I mean, that might be a little short, 6 blocks, but it's very short, right? And if we don't venture out and we don't connect with other people and we don't see, how we are more alike than we are different, we can really, those are some of the commonalities we can have is like, what are the things that we stand for and how can we make, that impact in the world and really move into that place. What would you say with, you are working with, really building leaders with integrity and really standing in, their role and who that is in the world. What do you feel that are people's biggest challenge to step into that?
Time, community, and clarity.
Speak about more on that.
I might say clarity first.
Okay.
When I start working with people, we start with the foundations of the values. And it doesn't matter if it's an individual, teams or departments, or an entire organization. And many people think they're clear because I'll say, well, what are your goals? What are your visions? And they go, oh, it's all up here. Well, tell me something. Well, it's kind of like this. It's a little like that. Well, I really haven't had time to think about it.
Right.
And so it's really and that's where in the passionate, the purposeful, and the positively influential comes in. It's being purposeful. It's not about just going out and doing. It's not about just going out and running the organization or leading the team inside of the organization. It's taking time out to pause and say, if your organization were in its ideal state right now, and you had the ideal people inside serving and contributing, developing your products and your services and taking them to market, what would that look like? And how would people be treating one another? What would be the essence inside of the company? And really getting to the heart of what it is. People are so busy just going and doing and meeting the numbers, doing the things that we can just quickly check off. And so it's really about first being clear on whatever it is. And Diane, you had mentioned we're coming to the end of a decade and a year, and we're getting ready to shift into a new year and a new decade. It's a great time for people to get clear. I know in the business world, we've been talking about the 2020 vision since Y2K.
Yeah.
How many people tuning in right now have been thinking about your 2020 vision for you, for your life, for your business?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and this is such an important conversation to be having because I think that people are intuitively feeling that this next decade is going to be very different than what we've experienced. And it starts with who are we going to be in that? So many times people look in the world about like what's happening outside of ourselves.
Yes.
And yes, there's always going to be noise. There's always going to be things that are happening in the world that may be more of a distraction than anything else. Because we always have the opportunity to decide how we're going to be in that, what impact we're going to have. And you're right, that starts with how are you being clear with that and seeing what are your values and having that be your foundation of you deciding what you want to do and be in the world. And I think sometimes we think that is doesn't have as big of an impact as it does, that who we're being really does affect so many people that we'll probably never even know about, right? When you show up just doing you, right? And deciding what version of that it's going to be is going to be really huge. And, we talk about what kind of impact that you want to have and what that looks like. And you mentioned about having a leadership contract with yourself.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that. What's that look like?
It's right there. So it's who I get to be more of, right? I get to be more of as I create this next phase of life, of my leadership and of my business. It says, I am a present, powerful, resilient leader. and I signed and dated it. And so whenever I get to those points where I start disempowering myself, where a thought of unworthiness or I don't deserve it or who am I pops into my head, I remind myself of why I've been given this dream, this task, this purpose in life. And I remind myself by having that with me, and I have one that I travel with actually, and I hang it up in my hotel rooms, that reminds me I get to show up. Because when I'm in my stuff, I hide. Right. So I get to show up, I get to be heard and utilize my voice, and I get to be resilient. Because no matter how good you are, how experienced you are, how knowledgeable you are, stuff is going to happen, especially if you choose to live a life where it's never stagnant. If you're always looking for the next phase in your journey, there will always be another first, something that you haven't done. And that's going to give you the opportunity, should you choose to accept it, to be resilient. And I think another one that's unspoken in that contract, Diane, and something that I really learned more in the last 15 years than at any point in my life, is that each of us, I don't know that each of us always remembers the control and the responsibility that we have within inside of us to be able to empower ourselves first, to empower others next. 100% of the time, we have control over the thoughts that we think, the beliefs that we hold, and the actions or behaviors that we take in the world. And when we feel ourselves pointing the finger at someone outside of ourselves, we're disempowering ourselves. Yes. So when you're looking to create a leadership contract for yourself, anybody tuning in, remember that you can and can choose every day to empower yourself. So look inside and ask yourself, what can I be doing to empower myself in the way that I lead and live my life so that I can show up at my best for others? And that is influence.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you have a contract with yourself. And it's so important to get back to that personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. I mean, in a day and age where like everyone's pointing fingers out towards someone else, it's like, what are you taking responsible action on? What are you deciding you want your experience to be about really standing in being your own authority, being your own doctor, being your own leader? I mean, how is it that you are showing up as those things first? And, our dear mutual friend, Bo Eason, talks about having your own Declaration of Independence, where you actually you have things that are written and, you have people witness it and you have them look at like, what are you standing for? Because what happens when we actually take a stand and stand in our own power and we do something that's out of alignment with that. And when we let ourselves down, then we actually, I believe that becomes like this scratch in the record of not being able to move forward and do your bigger work in the world. Because if you can't stand in a place where you're honoring your own values and your own vision and what you're doing, you can't stand for other people in that. And I know some people think that that can be a selfish thing when you're looking so much into yourself and who you're being. But it's the only thing we can do is to really embrace that and really come from that place of, okay, how am I standing in my power? How am I wielding that power? And am I a power for good? And being able to utilize that in such a way. And it's so important to take that time out. Like you take a couple weeks out for personal like growth and professional development. Right. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that because I know the whole issue around time comes up so much. And, really I come from a place of what if time and money wasn't an issue, right? And come from asking those kind of questions. How would you actually craft your life? How would you lead your life? What would you do? What do you focus on in those 2 weeks? And why is it that you've carved the time for yourself for those 2 weeks a year?
So great questions. I think the first piece is I've always been into developing myself. And it goes back to being a little 8-year-old when I looked myself in the mirror at 3 a.m. in the morning and I had little tears streaming down my face. And I just said, I don't want the path I'm destined for. I don't. And so what drove me to about 33 years was this idea of, if I only had, I went to college, got my degree. I said, if I, at 8 years old, get a degree, be really successful, make lots of money, and you'll be really happy, right? And so I did that, and that drove me to 33. And then at 33, I realized what drove me to 33 wasn't going to get me to 66. And so it was really about coming back, getting clear, and realizing that I've been given the gift of life. I don't know how long my visa will be here. I'm not sure. And I'm going to live the best life I can possibly live. And what I realized from people around me as a child, they were doing the best they could.
Yeah.
And they chose to stay there. And I want to be at my best, whatever that means to everybody. It's a personal decision. For me, being at my best is one of my values of excellence. I don't ever want to be stagnant. I don't ever want to be comfortable. And I don't ever want to lose relevancy in the world. Mm-hmm. And so with that said, I take a look at each and every year, where do I want to hone myself personally? Where would I like to learn something new or get more training in a particular area, so that I get to show up as my best for me, and that allows me to show up the best for those whom I serve, my clients. And so this year, I think I did too much. I think I probably did about 6 weeks because I felt like I wanted to do some additional programs. And you can do too much, I think.
You're getting ready for a new decade, though.
Well, and I was preparing for 2020. It's interesting that you say that, because I lost sight of that, Diane. It's asking yourself, and again, it comes back to that clarity. What's next for me?
Yeah, I think it's so important to ask those questions and to be in that place. And,
Yes.
you know, I love you just sharing your path and your wisdom and just what you stand for. And I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in connection with you. And you actually have a free gift for them to really start kind of honing in on that 2020. And we'll have all the links in the show notes, but I'd love for you to share a little bit about what that is.
So I am all about creating your 2020 vision. And that's getting clear about many of the things that we've talked about today. And what people oftentimes don't know is what their key drivers for success actually are. So I'm going to provide a free assessment that lets anyone who wants to participate in the assessment to find out what your 5 key drivers are for success in 2020 and beyond. And also I thought, what the heck, it's 2020. So why don't we do a 20-minute vision call with you to talk about your key drivers for 2020?
I love that.
A free assessment and a free 20-minute vision call.
Perfect. That is so generous of you. And we will definitely have that in the links. And how can people connect with you? How can they follow you?
Probably the easiest way is on either Instagram or Twitter, which you can find me Twitter at chiefrockstar.com, at Instagram, chief_rock_star, or just find me on Facebook.
Okay, perfect. And we'll put that link in the show notes for those of you who are driving. Don't crash. You know, we'll get that for you, and you'll have all the information you have. And, you know, one of the things I love to ask my guests, because you and I are such fans of environments and what we create in those,
Yes.
and we have different experiences in our bedroom versus our kitchen versus our office. What is your favorite room in your home and why?
Whoa. That's a good question. I'm going to say in my Las Vegas home, we have 2 homes. We have a 1930 home in Southern California, and we have a 2019 modern contemporary home in Las Vegas, and it's got to be the great room. We sit up on a hill, and we can see the entire Las Vegas Valley from north to south, 180 degrees. The Red Rock Mountains, Mount Charleston has snow on it right now in the Las Vegas Strip. And we get to see some amazing sunsets. And Diane, even more than just sharing, I had to paint the picture, because what's really important in creating those environments is the clarity around what are the things that are important to you, what are your passions. As our good friend Janet Bray Atwood would say, we realized in Las Vegas, our old home was set in a beautiful area. It backed up to a beautiful greenway, and yet we didn't see the sunset. Mm. And one of my top passions is seeing the sunset. Yes. And so for 3.5 years, we never saw the sunset. And when I'm at my Las Vegas home, I get to see the sunset every single night. And it is so powerful what something so simple actually brings to me and my energy, that I appreciate you sharing the power of environments with everyone.
Yes. I so agree. I mean, my home is perfectly situated for sunsets, and, you know, I don't ever, miss that whenever I can. And just to see that and be there, I know it's one of the reasons why I've been in my home for over 20 years and raised my daughters, is that there's such inspiration in the environments that we create and what that looks like. And I've had different iterations of what I've created within my home over the years, but I believe that it is a complete reflection of what we're choosing that's important, who are the people we're spending our time with, and what is the impact that we're having. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and being here on the show. It's just such a pleasure to be with you.
I just want to appreciate and acknowledge you, Diane. I have known you since 2008. Your energy is consistent. Your smile is electrifying. And the work that you choose to do out there in the world is making an impact, life by life, group by group, community by community. So thank you for what you do. And thank you for giving me really an honor to be able to see your audience and speak to them. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Just love you and your wisdom and what you're up to. And thank you for standing for integrity in the world. We need a lot more people that are just getting out there and standing in who they are and who they're being. And, you know, to our audience that is either listening or watching or whatever platform that you are on, we just honor you for your time, our most precious resource, for being here with us and being part of the conversation. Would love for you guys to put in the comments, you know, like, what is your takeaway? What is something that you're going to take action on? What is it that you're going to shift? You know, Kristi talked about, you know, not being stagnant, about change, and about really embracing who it is that you're being. So make sure that you tag her and myself for any questions that you have. Please, you know, like, subscribe, rate, comment, all those wonderful things that get us out in the world and really sharing this message, because our community wouldn't be here without you. And we love for you to be part of the communication and really sharing it and getting it out in the world. So I appreciate you and your time. And until we connect again, live your spotlight. Bye for now. Bye-bye.